Your fates were already written in stone, tragically, may I add. I'd best not get connected to him too much. He won't last a few more days, and then they'll turn on you. I was in anguish by this time, and I yelled at the voice. How do you know? Are you with them? Do you know what's going to happen? Do you know why they're doing this? She chuckled, which really made me annoyed and terrified. Why would she be chuckling? Do I know what's going to happen? You have no idea how old I am, and I've lived to see this many times over, and it always ends up the same way, unless, of course, you're exactly what they're looking for. Like me, for example. My aggression and my prowess make me stand out from the rest. You think that they would kill me with my hysterics, but because I am the only one of my kind, they keep me around. Of course, this is not the ideal life that I would give myself, but an intelligent person bides their time. None of this made any sense to me. I had no idea what this creature looked like or what she was even talking about. But one thing was for sure, and I knew it now. The humans were not our friend. They were not even our family. Now that I know that something bad is going to happen to my brother, I started to devise a plan to get out of here. When the humans came in the next morning, I would attack them and then leap out, creating a diversion and give my brother time to get away. But thinking about a plan like that in your head and actually executing it are two different things. When the humans came by the next morning, they took my brother and tried to inject something into him again. This time I launched at their paw and I ripped into it, but this seemed to do nothing. I felt a punch in my face and I went sailing back into the other side of the glass. By the time I got back up, they were already taking their hands out of the enclosure and walking away. Obson? I looked at my brother. He opened his eyes and had a big smile on his face. Hey, I thought I'd never see you again. This confused me. He wasn't behaving as though he had just been tortured the day before. Obson, how are you feeling? I feel great. What do you mean? What do you mean, what do I mean? I asked him, now very angry. Those humans tortured you. Oh, you're so silly, Indy. They were just testing my strength. I know that now. Testing your strength by burning your skin and face off? Well, yeah. At that moment in time, I was more angry at my brother than I was at the humans. Obson, how can you say something like that? You felt what they put you through. I know that, Indy, he said as he stood up to face me. He then nuzzled me in my face. Do you think if they wanted to kill me, I'd still be here? What would be the reason to keep me alive? I didn't really have an answer for that because at the time I could not understand why anything would do that to something else. Why would you torture something just for the sake of doing it? To what end? It made no sense. And while I was expecting that dark voice to chime in once more, that was the last I ever heard of it. For days, everything seemed normal, and the only time the humans would come over to our enclosure was to inject something into my brother. He was feeling himself again, and in time, we, for the most part, forgot what happened. Until they came again. And I knew what they were coming for because I could see them coming straight for us, and I could see their body movement, and everything spelled to me that I was going to lose my brother. They reached into the enclosure, and I went on full attack mode. But before I could do anything, something was stuck into my body, and I started to feel really tired. I saw them lift Obson out of our enclosure and carry him back to that desk across the lab. This time, they put him through the same stress tests, but gave him even more. They shoved a sharp object down his throat, which caused him to cry and gurgle and bleed. They placed a weird, sharp-toothed, hairy creature inside an enclosure with him and forced him to fight it. They made various large cuts and abrasions on his body and poured whatever that liquid was on top of him to make him cry. I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't take hearing his screams and seeing him in his throes of pain and panic. Whatever they stuck inside my body only made me tired, but it didn't make me fall asleep. I was helpless. I was helpless to say anything, but I could see and feel and hear everything that was going on. When everything got really bad, the thing that really broke me was when I heard my brother crying out my name, begging me to tell them to stop. I could hear laughter coming from inside that box. That sinister creature that warned me that this would happen was laughing. My brother kept screaming, and it just would not end. Maybe they let up for about 3 seconds before they were at it again, and it made me believe that he probably passed out from all the pain and anguish, and they woke him back up with the shots that they gave him, just to do it all over again. They stressed his body to the max. And honestly, when I couldn't take it anymore, I banged my head against my enclosure. I banged it so hard that I made myself unconscious. When I awoke, my brother again was beside me. This time he looked even worse. I cradled him again and I cried. I cried so much. The same routine happened every single day. And every time I got back my brother, he was worse off. I didn't know what to do. I overheard some of the creatures on one side of the lab consoling one another, as though they were going through the same thing. It sounded like a mother and a daughter, these very small green dinosaurs with sharp beaks. The mother said to her daughter that she had more control than she thought she did. "Indy," my brother said to me. I quickly looked down at him. Most of the skin on his body was either healing or missing altogether. "Yes, little brother." "Where do you want to go when you grow up?" "I don't know. I guess I want to go to that fire world that we created." The first time we saw fire in the lab, we were always mesmerized by it, and we imagined that there was a world where the fire lived and bred with its own kind to make more fire. We imagined that the fire was good and happy, and that the fire would treat us like royals when we went there. So if there's any place I'd want to be, it'd be there. I looked down at him, and I said, "What about you?" Opson opened his eyes, barely able to keep them open, and said to me, "I want to go there with you." "Well, no one's stopping you," I said. "Indy." "Yes, Opson." I held him tighter with my tail, taking care not to hurt him. "I want to go there now." His whole body shivered as he said that. I was still very young, so I had no idea what he meant. What do you mean?" I think in that moment I knew exactly what he meant, but I didn't want to face it. "I can't do this anymore. I can't be what they want me to be. I failed. I'm sorry." I cried with my brother. "You didn't do anything wrong. What they're doing to you is horrible." "It's gonna keep on happening. I can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore." I watched as my little brother's body was racked with sobs until he finally went still. I sat up the whole night just staring through the glass ahead at the other side of the lab where they usually torture my brother. I stared for a very long time. I looked back down at my brother. I could feel the time that was steadily ebbing on by, knowing that in only a few moments the humans would be in here again to perform their ritual with my brother's body. I was thinking about what the green creature said to her daughter about her having control. When my brother is being tortured, nothing I do can help him. And he doesn't want to do this anymore. I want to go there now. I can't do this anymore. I can't be what they want me to be. I failed. I'm sorry. It's gonna keep happening. I can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore. Opson. I nuzzled my brother to try and wake him up one last time. His breathing was shallow. I'm unsure as to whether or not he could hear me in that moment. He was probably somewhere between being asleep and awake, but I told him anyway that he was going to go to the fire world, and he was going to be able to commune with the fire. He would become like the fire, eating everything, being one with everything, giving things life, and things respecting him and his beauty. As I licked his face and his neck, I found that my jaws remained stationary on his neck, open just wide enough to fit right over his neck. And then I squeezed very gently at first, and then tighter. His body moved ever so slightly. When I squeezed tighter, I could hear him wheezing, trying to struggle to breathe. And then I remembered all the torture that he went through when they were torturing him and he was unable to breathe and they refused to stop. And in all my anger and my pain, my jaws squeezed even tighter and tighter and tighter. "Indy!" I heard him cry out, but I didn't want to listen. It's the only thing I could have done. It's the only thing I could do to help him. I could feel his tiny claws and legs kicking at my body, but I refused to listen. I became the humans, I became them. I tortured my brother for the last time so that they wouldn't for the rest of his life. Just like the humans, he trusted me. Then he was still. No more air was being pushed from his nose. His little body was no longer rising and falling in a deep slumber, indicative of him breathing shallowly. Became cold. His eyes were open. His mouth was slack, staring at nothing. I didn't even get to say goodbye. How do you possibly say goodbye to someone who is the other half of you? I lay down beside Opson's body, trying to keep him warm. But no matter how much I lay beside him and how much my body enveloped his, he just became colder and colder until I couldn't bear it anymore, and I pushed him away and lay on the far side of my enclosure. I looked at his body for a while, and I knew what those humans were going to do. I've seen them do it with other creatures, and I just ignored, because I always thought those creatures were less than me. Even in death, they were going to try and torture him, to bring him back, and to make him feel pain somehow. I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. So, before the humans came in, only minutes after, I went over to my brother's body. I placed my jaws over his beautiful, now still and lifeless neck, and I began pulling the flesh from his bones. Don't worry, Opson, I'll protect you. I'll put you inside me so they'll never hurt you ever again. I promise.